Hi, I'm Rebecca Downs, original music artist from Birmingham, UK. Welcome to Series 3 of my podcast Downs Your Way in association with Blues in Britain magazine. For further details of me, the magazine, or my guests, please follow the links in the show notes below. This week I am talking to Stephen Stanley of Solid Entertainment. Stephen is a promoter and booking agent and is probably best known for his 1 and 3-day rock and blues festivals held at various locations across the UK. His business is entirely based on selling tickets to gigs, so I'm really looking forward to hearing what he has to say about the current scene. Right, so for this episode of the podcast, we have on a very special guest, someone that is very well known in the blues and rock scene. Can you introduce yourself, Mr. Stephen?
Hello, Miss Rebecca. Lovely to see you all, or if you can see me or hear me. It's Stephen, Solid Entertainment, festival and concert promoter, friend to the stars, whatever.
You're you're very kind of demure there because you're basically the guy on the blues rock scene, I would say at the moment, that's holding up the festival scene. So
Well, I'm
I
not the only
I
one. I
would
mean,
say that. No, you're not the only one, but you're probably the most you kind of do the most festivals.
I stay positive. As a promoter, you have to be positive, no matter what the odds are, what goes against you. We got through COVID, and that was the worst setback we'd ever known in the history of live music. As long as we've all been around, that was a real setback. So what you have to do is you have to stay positive. You have to take the rough with the smooth. We go through really bad patches, and then we have some really good patches. And that's what promoting is. Anybody who says, well, I'm losing money, what do I do? Well, get out the game, because you will lose and you will win. But the most important thing is we do this as a passion. I do this because I absolutely love live music. That's all I've ever known. I'm not a musician, can't sing, can't play a note, but I love live music. And that's what I've always known. And that's what I'll always do. So, yeah, between me and yourself and all the other musicians out there that want to keep music live, which every single one of them does, then together as one big team, we make it work. And that's how we do make it work. We just stick together and keep doing it.
Yeah, because I was going to ask how, would you describe the current scene at the moment, and what have been the changes? Would you say? I know you talked about post COVID, but what's the scene like at the moment? How are you finding things? How are things going?
Well, right up until COVID, numbers were actually going up on everything. Lots and lots of touring acts, lots and lots of festivals, year on year. Things were growing. They weren't growing fast, but they were growing. I call them slow burners. If you start off with an indoor festival and 200 people come to the first one, and the next one 230 come, the next one 260. It's a slow burning grower because it's word of mouth. People come, they have a great time, they tell their friends, they convince other people it's a good idea to go, and things build up. So all that was happening really, really well before COVID. It was happening with all the acts on all the tours. They were gradually getting larger audiences everywhere they went. They were getting more and more shows because there were more and more venues. And then COVID just hit us like this just giant wrecking ball. It just smashed everything. We couldn't believe that we just sat there and we couldn't do anything. At first, everything was postponed for 3 weeks because we thought, oh, it's like flu, we'll all get over it. So everything got postponed for 3 weeks. Then after 3 weeks, everything got postponed for another 6 weeks because it went on and on. And the story just multiplies. So by the time we'd had a year of lockdown, we were having to move things a whole year into the future because it was an unknown territory. So when we got back from COVID, all acts, all managers or promoters or venues, we all thought exactly the same. We thought, wow, this is going to be incredible. People have been locked away in their own homes for 15 months. Not they all want to come out. So as soon as we go on sale, as soon as we're open again, everything's going to sell out. We're going to be in a boom time. It's going to be the most incredible. And the sad news was, as you all know, it was the complete opposite. Everything was down 50%. So if we'd had a show that had sold 200 tickets, only 100 people came. Even if people had bought tickets, they weren't coming. There's so many out there that, they bought a ticket to be helpful and to support the artist. But when it actually came to the night of the gig, they weren't coming. So it took us a long while. It took another 15 months, 16 months, whatever it was, to start growing the numbers again. So it was like we'd been set back. It was go and throw the dice and start all over again. It was almost like we'd not been promoters anymore. We'd not played any live shows. It was like we'd reinvented the wheel and we had to find a new way of getting people out. So the sad thing was all the people who grew up in the 60s and 70s, the generation that support real live music, the blues scene, the rock scene that we're all involved in, they're the most reliable audience. They're the people who support everyone. But it took a while to get those out. And a lot of them, certainly, certain age group at the high end of the age numbers, they simply didn't come out again. And they still haven't. They found that if they sat at home, they can now get YouTube on the plasma screen TV. They could get a case of beer for the cost of 2 pints of beer in a venue. And they could watch every gig they'd ever been to and every act they ever wanted to see. So we've got this new, certain older generation that said, well, I'm in the comfort of my own home. I don't want to go out and have to wear a mask. I don't want to catch a cold, never mind COVID. So that took away a lot of our, what we called our regular audience who came out and supported. So the toughest thing has been trying to replace all those people with new people. And going back to the point, it's the generation that grew up with live music. It's the generation that grew up with blues, that grew up with rock. We went to see every act. We embraced every act. We loved live music. And that's the people who currently support all our local scene that we've got now. But we're not growing it. The problem we've got is we can't get, without being rude, we can't get anyone under the age of 40, with very few exceptions, to actually go and see blues and rock shows. There's a few parents that have educated the children and said, you've got to come and see this band. They're absolutely amazing. And they've heard them play the albums and the CDs, or they've listened to it, or they watch YouTube. So, but they're in a small minority. We're not converting enough people that are the same age as the acts. And that's the real issue, the real problem, that every band, every solo artist I speak to says the same thing.
Yeah, it is absolutely true.
A classic example, I worked with a very young rock band last year. They did one of my festivals for me, and they were all 17, 18, 19 at the most years old. And I got all the 5 of them together, and I said, guys, I've got to ask you this question. And all the dads with them, each one had the dad there as well. I said, guys, how many people that you went to school with, or you're now going to college or uni with, your own age, how many of those are coming to actually see you play live? Because you're an amazing band. You're playing great music. You've got great songs. Are they coming to see you? And the answer from all 5 of them individually was no. And I said, so what? Nobody your age has ever been, not if they're on the guest list. And they said, oh, yeah. Originally, if we play a hometown gig, my friend who I sat with at school will come and see us. But he'll only come once because they've ticked the box.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And this is what we're also finding with younger generation that will go. If we do get anybody to go and see an amazing guitar hero, they'll go and they'll see them, and you'll say to them, so what did you think? And I said, yeah, it was great. Yeah, we really loved it. So are you going to come next time he's touring? And they go, well, seen him. Tick the box. So they're not fanatical. We were all fanatical. We bought the album, we went to the gig, we bought the t-shirt, we did all the things. And once we were a fan of a band, you were always a fan of the band. You didn't grow up liking Led Zeppelin and then 6 weeks later go, no, they're not that good. I prefer Black Sabbath. It wasn't like that. It was whatever you got into, you stayed with. And as you've just seen with the sad demise of Ozzy Osbourne, all those people that grew up with him, all those people that admired him were all there at the end. They were there at the beginning and they're all there again at the end. And that's the way it is. So, sorry, it sounds a bit doom and gloom. So that's the worst bit.
We have to be honest. That's what it's all about, because we're trying to do this to try and raise awareness, to try and talk through these issues. And I absolutely know what you mean. And I was just watching an episode of the Osbournes' basement tapes where they look back at the Osbourne show, and the interviewer said, why did you get rid of your record company, Sharon? It was successful. You had it for 10 years during Ozfest and all that." And Jack Osbourne just pipes up and said, "Well, it went the way of the music industry. Couldn't make money out of it anymore." And I was like, Jesus, if the Osbournes are saying they can't make money out of a record company. And I literally just watched that yesterday.
Yeah. You see, that's what's changed so much. When I started, a new rock band would come along and they weren't very well known. We'd book them, but they'd turn up in a tour bus or someone would be driving them. They would be staying in a hotel. They would be getting wages. And the way that all happened was the record company would sign them up for at least a 2-album deal and they get £100,000 advance. Now, £100,000 30, 40 years ago was a hell of a lot of money. Now, it didn't mean the band got the money. It meant that the budget was there. So the band would be looked after. The promotion was incredible. The advertising was out there in the magazines. There were fly posters in all the cities. It was, they got behind it. The record label did it. And they paid the band wages and they didn't start getting proper money until the time the second album was number 10 in the charts. Then they'd start earning from the album. But the point being is that somebody invested in them. So someone came along and said, "You are amazing. Get in this recording studio. We're going to sign you. We're going to get you out on tour." And off you go. And then when the headline band went out there and played the city halls, which was the circuit at the time, the guest support act would be on 50 quid a night. But 18 months later, that same support act would be playing those same venues. And I saw that so many times. Going back to Black Sabbath, I saw Black Sabbath on, I think it was probably the 10th anniversary tour, which was, in the very early 80s. And we saw them at Sheffield City Hall. And we normally didn't go in for the support band. Everyone would go in the pub, have a couple of beers, and at 9 o'clock, the main band was on. You ran across and in you went. But the buzz was going round, "Oh, you've got to see the support tonight." "Why? Who's it?" "Oh, they're called Van Halen." Van Halen, that's a weird name. What? They're not going to get, So there they were. So Black Sabbath had Van Halen as the tour support. 18 months later, Van Halen were playing Monsters of Rock at Donington Park, and they were selling out bigger venues than Black Sabbath were. So it used to work amazingly well. So fast forward to where we are now. The problem we've got now is we haven't got that young, enthusiastic audience that wants rock or blues music. That's the issue.
Do you think that is a result of music basically becoming free? Because in our scene, people do still buy CDs and they do still buy albums, but it's a very niche, it's a very tiny part of an audience potential in the whole of like the UK or whatever. So do you think that's do you think people just, like the younger generation who've grown up with just streaming, don't really value it because of that?
You're absolutely right. That's the case. That's exactly what it is. When we went out and bought our first album, bought our early albums, we would buy the album. First of all, you'd be carrying around amazing artwork. You'd love it. That was your identity. You went to school, you had the album with your arm, you went to a youth club, wherever you went to a party, you had your album with you. So already, you'd got yourself some identity. You know, you bought Led Zeppelin 2, and there you were, you were a Led Zeppelin fan. And you would go home and you would put the vinyl on. You would always play side one first. You always play track one. You would listen to the entire side. You would then turn it over and listen to the whole of side two. You'd never skip tracks. You'd never pick one out. You'd listen to the whole album in the same way as you would watch a film. You started at the beginning and you went through to the end. That's what's missing now. They don't do that. They download one track, they'll listen to it for maybe a week, 2 weeks, and then they delete it. It's gone, forgotten. It doesn't tie in with any memory bank. Whereas everything we ever did tied in with your memory bank. Music was so important. You can remember where you were when you first heard a certain song. You know, we all listened to the radio. You know, it was Radio 1, and Radio 1, like it is now, was mainly pop acts, but every now and again they'd play a rock act, and we'd wait for that. The same as the most valuable thing was television. Top of the Pops was the most important program. It didn't matter that it was Moldy Old Doe was on, or the Stylistics. It didn't matter, because at any minute you might suddenly see Iron Maiden, or you might see Ian Gillan, or you might see Black Sabbath. There'd be a rock song on there, or there'd be there'd be something that caught you. So by watching the 9 tracks, one of those would stay with you. And then you'd buy, if you didn't buy the single, you'd certainly go out and buy the album. You know, we weren't all single buyers. We'd hear the single and that would inspire you, and you'd go out and buy the album.
And it was an investment, wasn't it? It was an investment with your money and your time.
Yeah.
And as you say, like that identity thing, like it was like, oh, I now belong to this tribe. This is who I am. You know what I mean? So I agree.
That was it. Where it started to go wrong is when music splintered off, because it was pop music or it was rock music. It was sort of one or the other. There were other, there was country around and there was folk, but the big stuff was pop music or rock music. When it started to go wrong is when rock music said, oh, this is heavy metal, this is speed, this is thrash, this is, it splintered into all these smaller groups. And it happened because that was a younger audience. So, 15, 16-year-olds were going, oh, I only like thrash metal, I only like this. And even when you were saying, you need to widen your horizon and listen to everything, they didn't want to do that. So that changed things as well. Whereas with everyone that grew up in the 60s and 70s and early 80s, you widened your spectrum all the time, and we always went back to find out where things came from. I loved the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and then I found out that it came from rock and roll. So then I discovered Chuck Berry, I discovered Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, everybody. And then that came from somewhere. And exactly the same with blues. As you got into blues music, you suddenly went back. I didn't know Led Zeppelin was a blues band. Led Zeppelin was Led Zeppelin. That was it. But then you found out that it came from blues and that the songs were from Leadbelly. So you found out, who's this Leadbelly guy? So you listened to that. And then you found John Lee Hooker. You found, you just discovered it. They're not doing that now because there's too much going on and there's too many other things. The whole world's just walking around looking at a phone all day. We didn't do that because we didn't have one. There was no such thing. So, that's changed so much. But anyway, back to the thing. What we're going to do, how do we get more people to come and see our blues and rock bands that we're all in, that we're all promoting, and that we all want to be successful? There's a simple answer, but it's a difficult solution. The simple answer, it needs to be seen on television. As I just hit on the fact that whether you liked it or not, Top of the Pops was a massive influence on everybody. Everybody watched it. The whole family would watch it. Dad would say, that's rubbish. Mum would say, oh, he's a nice guy. You'd all have your opinion, but everybody at 7:30 on Thursday night would watch Top of the Pops. Now, if you didn't watch Top of the Pops, we then got the alternative, because we then came along the Old Grey Whistle Test, which was incredible. So we had the amazing Bob Harris, who showed us all these incredible films. They weren't videos, they were films that they put together. So when he played Led Zeppelin Trampled Underfoot, you'd find this old black and white video of, or film, sorry, of people dancing very fast. And you'd watch it and you'd hear it, and incredible. You know, I mean, first time we heard Meatloaf Bat Out of Hell was Bob Harris. He played Bat Out of Hell. We watched this incredible video, and everybody was like, "What is this?" You know. And I remember Bob's words. He said, "Meatloaf. Oh, he needs to change his name," because we didn't know what meatloaf was. It was an Americanism. You know, you bought meatloaf in America. We bought sausage rolls and bacon and egg. So the crazy thing is that the point being, television was the thing that you also discovered music. Now we've got hundreds of channels of TV. Nobody watches a program anymore because they're too busy flicking through every single channel trying to find something they like. So God bless the BBC. I know they've got the faults, but with the BBC, you haven't got advertising. So you've got, when you do get the Jules Holland program on, you've got all music from start to finish. What we need is to try and find some way of getting into the BBC and saying, guys, you know, we need the old grey whistle test back, or call it whatever you like. What we need is a program where the artists that I'm dealing with, that our generation of people love seeing, we need a program. We need something on TV to highlight them. That would be so important. During lockdown, we all watch more TV than we usually do, but I did start watching Sky Arts a lot, which I'd never done before. But their documentaries were absolutely incredible. You know, there was I mean, the Eagles one was on for about 3 days, but the point being, the documentaries that Sky Arts did were incredible. Now, Sky Arts could easily devote 1 hour a week or 90-minute program with advertising to blues and rock and the talent that is around now. It's convincing them that there'll be enough viewers. That's always the issue. So somehow we need to start this petition where we go to a TV channel and say, we want some exposure. You know, we want something like an old grey whistle test. And Bob Harris is still there. He'd love to do it.
I mean, that's a really interesting point. It's making me think nobody's raised that, and it's a really interesting point. My questions that straight arise from that is, would it go the same way as radio's going now? Because, you know, I myself have just been playlisted on a national radio station, and we're watching the metrics to see how it's changed with how the metrics were when we were last playlisted on this particular station. So it'd be interesting to see, because, well, again, when you're talking about bringing in a younger audience, I don't know any of my uni students that listen to radio, and that's another thing. It's all streaming. It's all, well, I don't believe the TikTok thing where you get one track and it's that it can go viral, but it's not going to make people invest in you as an artist. I don't believe that. Yeah, it's going to help, of course it is, but
I agree.
It's not a one-stop shop, is it, anymore? We've got so much. We've got the YouTube, we've got TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all the rest of it. So I think it'd be a great idea, but it's like the Jules Holland thing. Even though it's amazing to get on there, I don't even think it would have the impact that it did when it first started, because people were watching it more live, not on repeats. So the impact is kind of dissipated because it's across, like, people that stream it, a few people watch it live, you know. So I don't know, but it's a really interesting point.
No, you're quite right. I absolutely agree. But it was trying to sort of bring something where there is a focal point that says, you know, I mean, the reason the old grey whistle test was always on at 11 o'clock at night is because back then the pub closed at 10:30 and people got home for 11 and then they watched the old grey whistle test. So it's hard now because everybody's got different habits and different things they do. You know, it's a 24-hour day where everybody works under different time cycles, you know. So no, it's just it's what's the other solution? This is it. You know, we've all tried Facebook, we've all tried Instagram, we do all these amazing things, and you know, we pay for Facebook adverts. You spend 100 quid on Facebook, we'll tell you 7,000 people have seen it, 642 like it, and nobody buys a ticket.
Yeah.
And Zuckerberg's sailing around the world in his yacht. You know,
Yeah.
you know,
But then
there's
again,
nothing. There's no proof on it. It's a computer
no.
generated thing that can tell you anything they want. Back in the day when we had newspapers that people bought every day, and they did, you know, back in the day, I would put an advert for a gig in a newspaper. Everyone would read it and everyone would ring up and buy tickets, or they'd go to the local record shop and get tickets. So you knew the result straight away. Back in the day when I first advertised in Classic Rock magazine, when it first came out, I knew the day it was delivered because the phone would start ringing and we'd be selling tickets. And they would all say, just saw your advert in Classic Rock, just saw your advert here. Just, they don't say that anymore. You don't get that. They don't
No.
actually say, oh, I just saw your advert on Facebook. Can I buy a ticket? You know, when
No.
I, every now and again, I try and do this, or just to prove a point to people that, you know, I'll survey 20 people walking in the door at a gig, and I'll say, hi guys, how are you doing? Great. How did you know about tonight's gig? And you told me, and they go, yeah, my mate told me about it. Oh yeah, friend of mine told me. You know, what they never say is, oh, I got one of your leaflets, I saw your poster, we went on your website, we saw the Facebook, we saw your ad. You know, they don't ever say what we want them to say. And as you've just pointed out, we have to do everything. You know, as a promoter, you've got to do all the socials, you've got to do the PR, you try and get people interviewed on the radio, which is, you know, banging your head on the wall. We get like one act out of every 100 that actually gets an interview. And even if they do, who's listening? Does it increase ticket sales? No. But you've got to tick all those boxes. You've got to do all those things in the hope that you catch somebody that didn't know about it. You
Yeah, I
know,
mean, I agree. Yeah, it's like you've got the net is growing wider and wider and wider and
mm,
more dispersed, but you've
yeah,
still got to have your finger in every single pie.
yeah, yeah. And the net's getting wider. There's more holes in it. We're not catching them. They're getting through the holes. That's the problem. So
Yeah,
um, self-promotion, every single act and every member of every act now has to help. Everybody does. You know, back in the day, it's like, oh, well, you're the promoter, you sell the tickets. And it was easy. It was great. You know, one advert, few leaflets given out, posters up, people would book. That's what's changed. That's not working anymore. Um, it's what's different now is everybody in the audience is now a friend of the act. So there's this relationship where the act plays on stage, they come off stage, they meet the fans. By doing that, the fans immediately will buy the album, the CD, the T-shirt, whatever they want to sell, they will buy it. They're impulse buyers. They've just seen this amazing show.
yeah,
They love the show, love the act, and they will go straight to the merch desk and they will buy things. Um, that didn't happen again at the beginning when I was promoting predominantly rock bands and even punk bands. The band, there was always an unwritten rule that the audience never saw the act until they were on stage.
mm,
Um, the band didn't want the audience to see them. They wanted to see them. The first time was actually playing live. But then 9 out of every 10, the minute they finished on stage, they'd be straight on the tour bus, straight in the van, and off back
oh,
to wherever they were staying. So the audience never got to meet the acts. Now, back then, it was a good thing. It actually worked because they would have never been able to do meet and greet with 3,000 people in a city hall. It wouldn't have happened. That had just been mobbed, and you didn't need to do it then because they all went to the record shop the next day to buy the album.
yeah,
Um, so that's changed, and the audience that goes wants that friendship. That's so important to them now.
that's a
You know,
great
the
point.
connecting. It's number one. It's on the top of every list. Any act that's not meeting their audience is going down the wrong road.
Yeah,
Um, they've all got to do it, and the most successful of all the acts that we're working with currently are the ones that have engaged the most with their audiences. and got to know them. They want to be fans. And then those people, as I see all the time, they travel. They don't go to one show. If we're doing a 30-day tour, you'll see people at least 3 or 4 times.
Yeah,
They're
there's a
true
community,
fans.
isn't there? I think there's a community
Oh,
built,
yeah.
and it's not just and what's really great is they're not just like, oh, I only like that band. It's
No.
like, no, they'll go
Yeah.
around and see loads of bands, and give the same commitment to quite a lot of bands as
Yeah.
well.
You're
But
absolutely right. I see this
so
all.
that's
Yeah.
great.
I see it all the time. I get lots of acts who think it's their fans. It isn't the shared.
We
It's
are
the same.
sharing a very
Yeah.
small audience.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. And then if you say, well, oh, the numbers were down on Wednesday night somewhere, it's not because they didn't want to go. It's because they're going to so many other gigs. There's people going, they're still going to 2 gigs a week. That's the
Oh
average.
yeah.
So it is no one's got an exclusive fan base. It's not like, oh, there are fans, they only like me and they never go and see anyone else. You're quite right. It's a community. They love the genre of music. It crosses over. It's not all blues. It's not all rock. It all crosses over to the very same people. And I get acts that say, oh, I'm going to be rock now, which they are, and that's great. We love it. But the same people follow them. It doesn't suddenly
Yeah.
change. There is
No.
no segregated audience.
No.
The sad thing is the rock circuit in this country is now the tribute circuit, because all what we used to know as rock clubs every Friday and Saturday, you can't get a Friday and Saturday date for an original act because they've got tribute acts on.
Yeah.
And the tributes have taken a very, very big chunk of the market. And all that does, it's a night out, they can all have a drink, and they've got familiar music in the background.
Yeah.
They don't have to be glued to the act on stage. They don't have to
They-
watch every move. They can talk to the friends, but it's all about nostalgia. It's familiarity, and the
Yeah.
people, no disrespect for them, it's what they
No.
like to do. But for love nor money, you can't get that audience to go and see an original act because
No,
they
they are two
don't relate.
different beasts with
Yeah,
two
yeah,
different sets of people, aren't they? With two different objectives. They do not cross over at
no,
all.
no.
No. It's really interesting because so have you seen any sort of rising costs with your festivals since COVID as well? And because I know you try and keep your ticket prices very reasonable for the amount of acts that people see, but obviously
Yeah.
it's a balancing act all the time, isn't it? So, kind of have you seen rising costs because of sort of lower numbers, and how do you
Yeah,
manage
well, the thing
that?
is, venues, as you know, the most money venues make is from bar sales. And again, what the bars are finding is they're not drinking as much.
Mm.
The younger audiences, but again, as audiences are mature, they'll have a couple of drinks, they'll enjoy themselves, but they're not drinking to the same excess as they did when they were 18 to 35 or whatever. So venues need higher fees, which they creep up slowly. The cost of security has gone up dramatically over the last few years. They want, if you've got 200 people at a blues gig, you don't actually need any security because you're never going to have any problems with that audience. But because of the legislation and because of all the regulations, they don't look at audiences like, oh, we've got students in tonight, we need 4 security. Now we've got a mature audience, we still need 4 security. And my argument doesn't resonate with venues. They still say, oh, well, you've got 300 people here, we've got to have 4 people and you've got to pay for it. So yes, that rises the cost. Advertising, again, you can spend whatever you like on social media, and you have to do it because if something's not selling, you think, well, what am I going to do? So Costco. And again, the value for money thing, this is what I've always tried to do. When I do a 1-day festival with 6 acts on, the whole idea is value for money. So you'll have a headline act that will bring in most of the audience. You'll have a second to top who can also bring people in, and even the third to top. But then there'll be 3 other acts who are maybe playing the festival for the first time, or they're certainly playing that particular town or city for the first time, and the
Mm.
audience will say to me, "Oh, who are these? I've never heard of them." And I say, "That is why they're on.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
on because you've never heard of them. So I'm putting them on here, so you will have heard of them."
That's
So
great.
that's what I've always done. So it's it's about giving a real good balance and turning things into variety shows. I mean, again, going back 10, 15 years, everybody wanted an amazing guitar player. It was, the first blues rhythm and rock festivals I was doing, it was about each act had a lead guitar player who was the highlight of the show.
Mm.
And people got bored of that, not being rude, some great guitar players, but they didn't want to see six on the same day.
No.
They want to see an acoustic duo or trio. They want to see someone who's the rock side of blues. They want variety. So
Mm.
I'm throwing in the curveball and putting some crazy things on. When I did the UK Blues Festival this year, in January in Blackpool, I put Otway and Barrett on just for a laugh, no other reason, just to lighten the atmosphere and so people weren't taking it too seriously. So they do love variety shows, and that helps. Yeah.
Yeah, do you find that it's like that does, yeah, you're saying that does sort of help a little bit and it balances it out. So they respond pretty well, don't they, to the sort of lesser known
Yeah.
bands. They
Oh, very
always
much
have
so.
done. They always
Yeah.
have done that audience.
Yeah.
But if you ever had to scale back or, God forbid, cancel any festivals or any elements of a festival, like due to financial pressure, because we're seeing at the moment Northern Kin have gone under.
Yeah.
I was looking at a company's house report the other day at one particular festival, and it's running at a £300,000 loss. So it's like, and that goes on and on and on. The further you look, like, because I kind of work in a music university, the more it just comes out.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
don't think you've ever cancelled one, not to my knowledge, only for COVID, but I
Yeah,
don't know.
no. The thing is, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. I've tried doing open air. I've tried it. I've done some open air festivals. The costs are horrendous, and
Mm,
then your worst thing with an open air festival is if it rains, you lose half your audience anyway.
yeah,
It's you don't get a walk up. If you get the hottest day of the year and the sun's shining and everyone's in a great mood, 200 might pay on the gate. If it's slightest sign of rain or wind or adverse weather, nobody pays on the gate. So
no,
it's very easy for those festivals. They're spending crazy amounts of money on what they think are the biggest acts that are going to bring in the biggest audience. But it doesn't work, because that end of the market is taken care of by Leeds and Reading Festival, by Glastonbury, and by the Live Nation festivals and what they do in, British summertime in Hyde Park.
yeah,
So all of those type of events are well established. Doesn't matter how much the tickets are, if the right act is on, the audience will pay it. They
yes,
will go. They always find money. They always say tickets are expensive, but sadly, the audiences have caused expensive tickets. They've caused the problem. That's another debate, but I'll explain a little bit on that. Is when the internet came along, Mrs. Smith and her daughter wanted to go and see Take That, and the tickets were £20. And then what she realized was, oh, I'll buy 4 tickets, put 2 on eBay, sell them for £40 each. We've gone for nothing.
yeah,
And, everybody's happy. But the band's managers and agents and everybody involved looked at, wait a minute, our £20 ticket is selling for £40 on eBay.
yeah,
All right, next tour, we're going to be £40 ticket. And this is how it established. So then they toured at £40. Mrs. Smith still bought 4 tickets. She only needed 2. She put 2 on eBay and sold them for £80. And that just went on and on and on. And then
mm,
along came all the ticket tout, another niggling thing for me, the ticket touts of on the internet,
yeah,
which are registered in other countries. They get at the top of Google, they look official, and they'll charge you £750 for a £96 ticket.
Yeah.
So all that has got totally out of hand. It really has. I've got an audience who like to pay a reasonable price and get a real ticket. We still give them a real ticket, real entertainment, and someone to speak to. They can still ring a phone number and ask questions about the gig. Whereas they can't do that on the internet. The internet has caused high ticket prices, and the other thing that's caused it is people paying way too much. If everybody said, no, I'm not paying £150 to see Fred Smith in Birmingham NEC, if they didn't pay it, the price would drop instantly.
Yeah.
But at that end of the market, money doesn't seem to be an object anymore.
No, you can do what you like, really.
Yeah,
it seems.
Yeah, they're just paying it. Yeah. So sorry, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent.
No,
so
that's fine.
I need to find out how we can attract more people to come and see the amazing, talented acts that we've got around now. We've got incredible talent. They're writing great songs, recording good albums, and the live shows are second to none. Far better standard than support bands were originally. This is, we've got just nothing but good talent. There's very few bands that you say, oh God, don't go and see them. It's not like that. I say to everybody, go and check everyone out. Go and see everyone, because they're all very, very good at what they do.
Yeah, it just depends what you like, doesn't it?
Yeah,
so have you considered sort of diversifying even further at the festivals, like blending even more genres, adding workshops, streaming elements, or anything like that? I'm not saying that's the answer. I'm just sort of...
No. You're always looking at things like that. What I've tried to do originally, especially on the one-day festivals, is I've always tried to focus on one stage, one audience, because I want all the audience to actually see all the acts. So if I do Whitby and it's a Saturday event and there's 6 acts, we could do a second stage, but then the problem is if the audience is only, say, 250, 300 people, and you do an acoustic room downstairs, 50 or 60 will go to the acoustic room, which then means your 3 newer acts who are on the festival first are playing to less people. The way you can diversify more, and I'm trying to do this with the festivals in Blackpool, the UK Blues Rhythm Rock Festival there, is I've now gone to 4 stages. So we have a main stage with all the biggest names on. I always run and always have done for about 12 years our introducing stage. So that's always 4 acts a day, and the public vote for the favourite act. Whoever wins plays the main stage the following year. That works amazingly well. We've got
I remember doing that some years ago, Stephen.
Yeah. We've had some classic years, the bands that have gone on and won are incredible. There was one year, and it was the 3 winners on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It was Blue Nation, it was Rambling Preachers, and it was Brave Rival. Sadly, Rambling Preachers split up earlier this year, which is a shame because they were great. But Blue Nation and Brave Rival are just doing amazingly well. So their most important gig was starting out on that introducing stage, then getting to play to 2,000 people on the main stage. And as soon as that happened, there was a tour. Everybody in the country knew who they were. The word spread. So
it does help. It definitely did help us. My interview with Sari Shore and and Alan Nimmo would suggest that success, though, and what it looks like may not specifically equate to financial success.
No, the financial thing comes later. Like, this so well. The financial thing doesn't come in until you start pulling big audiences and breaking percentages. Bands are getting guaranteed fees, and that barely covers the cost to do the show. With the cost of hotels and transport and everything involved, especially the acts that are having to pay musicians as well. The acts that are, the acts that where it works best for are where all the members are equal. and they all got a certain share. That's,
Yeah.
but it can't all be like that. If you can't do it like that, you can't do it like that. But they don't start earning good wages, good money until they're selling good numbers, and on this circuit, a good number needs to be well over 250 people before they start, earning what you would say is this is good wage to do it. The good thing is though, it's the way they all sell the most CDs, vinyl, t-shirts, etc. It doesn't matter how many they've got for sale on a
Yeah.
website, or it doesn't matter what they put on Amazon. The best sales are from the end of the evening on a live gig, without any doubt.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and at 6 acts festivals, I've often found this quite amazing, is that the first act on often sells the most because they don't know them, so they haven't got anything. So they rush over, they've just seen them live, they think they're great, buy the CD, and then the next act, and then by the end of the night, I've seen Walter Trout headlining the festival, and he sold no merch whatsoever because they've all got the CD, they've all got the T-shirt, and they've spent all the money on all the other bands. So,
Well, exactly. Exactly, and that does happen. And I can say your festivals are brilliant for that, and it is that community, and they do want to see us survive. Because I have like uni
yeah,
kids come up to me and say, well, this is great. We're talking about these streaming models, Beck, and we're talking about like the metrics, and we're talking about the promotion and the short form videos and all this. How do we make any money out of this? I'm like,
yeah, yeah,
well, portfolio career at the moment, I'm afraid. That's just the way it's got to be. You can put your whole lot into it, probably at their age, 20, early
yeah.
20s. That's like your sweet spot. But earning money might not come till much, much further down the line. So you probably need
No, this
some,
is the issue. No, you've got to be way up there. You've got to be getting high numbers before that kicks in. And as you know, as you've seen in this blues world, there's only a handful of acts that have got to that status. Tedeschi Trucks Band in America, Joe Bonamassa in America. The Americans are embracing it far more than we do, sadly, in the UK. And as you know, lots and lots of acts that play Europe go into Germany, report back that the audience numbers are bigger,
mm,
they've been very well looked after, and they get good fees, they get hotels. All these things don't happen in the UK, quite simply because the numbers are not great enough. That is, you know, that's
that's
the sad state of affairs. We're back to numbers again. We need more people. Audience members notice. Audience members come up to you and say, what can we do to help you? We love coming to these gigs, your festivals. We want to support the acts. What can we do? And it's one simple answer. I always say, just bring one person with you that's never been before. If
yeah,
you all brought me just one new person, convert someone, the audience number would double and we'd all be smiling.
yeah, absolutely. And
It's that simple, and it's back to, again, it's back to this word of mouth thing. The guy that starts the rumor. Oh, I've heard that they're playing there. I've heard this. The guy that talks. So, okay, maybe if the TV idea doesn't work, here's the next one then. So the next one, and I don't know this magic person, but what I'm looking for, we need a magic person, late teens into 20s or something, that's an influencer. So we need
yeah,
someone who's suddenly picked up on this amazing music scene. They've heard great blues songs, they've heard great rock, and they are needed to influence because they're doing it with clothes, they're doing it with all sorts of fashion, books, they're doing everything. The lifestyles, what they do, they're influencing people and people are following it. So the word needs to get out there. We need some influencers for this music. We need someone who can dedicate the time to convincing people why they should listen to this song and why they should go and see this act play live.
yeah. I think that's a really good point. I mean, because when I've looked into it, so you've got bands, huge bands like Kaleo, who are much bigger
Yeah,
than Joe Bonamassa,
yeah,
Barnes
yeah,
Courtney, whose songs have been synced in so many films and Netflix, I can't even begin. You got
yeah,
artists like 2 Feet that sort of cross over blues with electronica, and again they've got 10 million monthly listeners and all this, and they're playing huge venues,
yeah,
and but they're not ever really linked to the blues. You will find like little kind of, probably with Kaleo, you'll find them, yeah, they're blues rock, but they're never really, never the twain shall meet. Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah,
like,
absolutely. Yeah,
it's like they kind of, well, I know with Barnes Courtney and especially 2 Feet, it's like you won't ever hear the blues. The word
no,
blues will be just
no.
sanctioned out because I think people think, oh, it's 12 bar. My dog just died, and but you know
Yeah.
what I mean. I think that
Oh, yeah,
if you go
yeah.
to a
And
younger
and and
person,
um,
that's
I
what
have
they
to
think.
say, I'm as guilty as anyone. The problem we have is, and again, it goes back to the days of the music press, goes back to the days of how things splinters. The real issue we've got is that we have to put the label on the tin. If there's no label on the tin, they won't buy it. Um, Blues rock audience are reliable people, but you have to tell them that that's what it is.
Yeah.
If I just said, oh, I've got this great band they're called the Joneses or the Smiths or the Johnsons, no one would go because,
No.
it's not like when I was growing up, someone said, this is Rory Gallagher. And you went, wow, he's a great guitar player. Someone said to me about 5 years ago, said, oh, the best blues guitarist ever was Rory Gallagher. I said, was he? And I didn't mean it in the respect that he wasn't a blues guitarist. It was that in my mind, he was a guitarist. I didn't need to know
Mm,
he was blues. And when I went to see him and when I bought all his albums, I didn't think, wow, what a great blues guitarist. I
no,
never,
no.
the word wasn't there, as you just said with these others. So, you know, all the bands I loved, nobody told me what they were.
Mm,
It was just that's what they are. That's Led Zeppelin, that's Rory Gallagher, that's Roxy Music, that's whatever. It wasn't, oh, this is a good blues band, you must go and see them. So um, I just love to well, I tried it. I'd love to put a music festival on and just call it, the love of my live music. I tried to put one on and I called it Love Live. I wanted a
right.
short, sharp name. So I tried to think, what can I call a festival that doesn't label the music, but it gets the point across that it's live. And I thought, what do we all like? What do all my audience like? Well, all my audience love live music. So I thought,
Mm,
that's it, Love Live. So I did a logo, Love Live, and it was predominantly rock bands. So I put a 3-day festival on in Blackpool called Love Live. I got some great bands on, 3 stages, good lineup. Um, Nobody bought a ticket
mm,
because they didn't get it. They didn't go Love Live. It didn't say rock, it didn't
mm,
say blues, and it didn't really tell them anything. And
mm.
it didn't work. You
No,
know,
it's strange, isn't it? And I think, I think the word rock and the word blues sometimes has connotations that some
yeah.
audiences just go, "Oh no, not for me,"
Well,
but they
they're
haven't
both
really heard it.
they're just general terms, and it's
Mm,
what's there. It's we've got blues in Britain. We've got Blues Matters. We've got classic rock. So they're the three magazines that relate to what we're doing.
mm,
No acts we're putting on are getting into Mojo magazine. I mean, they didn't get
no.
into Q magazine. Q magazine's folded now.
Well, it's gone,
So
yeah.
it's gone all together. Yeah, exactly. You know.
And I just want to, sorry, jump in that when I was
Yeah,
coming back from a gig not too long ago, I went into WH Smith's in the service station and they'd got maybe 200, 300 magazines in there. And I
yeah,
took a video of it and there is not one music
no,
magazine. There's musics on tanks and on trains and on
yeah,
farming.
everything.
There
Yeah,
used to be classic rock, the blues, Kerrang, Metal
yeah,
Hammer, you name it,
yeah. So
not
we're there.
one.
No, no, you're right. No, that's the thing. No, I still support the magazines. Always have. I still advertise them in because I want them to exist because it's a great way to people to find out. But, you know, they all need 10 new subscribers every week. That's all, 10 more people to subscribe to the magazine every single week. You know, that would work, but they're not doing that. So again, you know, the appeal goes out again. We need people to support magazines. And if they don't want to support magazines, we need them to go directly onto YouTube channels, go on to, you know, always look at a band's website. First point of contact, when a new band gets in touch with me and says, you know, will you put us on? The first thing I always do is go to their website, see how well it's set up, see how professional the website looks, to see there's some great videos on there, you know. I get so many emails, you know, we're a great band, audiences love us, and that's all they tell you. So that gets deleted, and then when they come back with a live video, I go, well, yeah, I'll give you a break. I'll introduce you on an introducing stage. But
oh, that's
we've got lots of fans. They'll all come if we're on. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Anyway, so
very, very difficult.
Summing up, because I've got another thing to do. Summing up for today is we need to maybe some way of getting the music we're involved in some form or somehow onto some sort of television, or, you know, a dedicated YouTube channel, you know, and people who can do that. And this idea of some sort of influencers, it doesn't matter what age they are, but I just thought, well, the younger the person, the more chance we've got of getting to people in their age group. But it's finding that person that has been to a live rock and blues gig and thinks, wow, this is incredible. I need to get other people to go. You know, when dad...
Yeah, sorry, go on.
I say when dads are in bands, they get the sons and the daughters to go, and then the sons and the daughters bring the friends. You know, I see quite a lot of that. But again, we're back to that same point. The box tickers, they'll go and see the dad in the band once, but then they don't need to see him again because they've already seen him.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? But I think even just to sum up, even on a you know, a cheaper route, the easiest somebody can do is repost on Facebook, talk to their friends. It costs nothing. So, you know, and we all appreciate it. So I think that's it. Thank you so much, Stephen, for all your time. Stephen Stanley, sort of the stalwart of the scene. It's been great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. That was a great and fantastic insight into the challenges that we face. If you have any views or suggestions for boosting the profile of our scene, please message me or email me. info@rebeccadowns.com. Next week, I return to the artist perspective when I interview guitarist and touring artist John Verity. Thank you for listening and or watching, and we'll see you next week when we're out. Bye.